And if you were raised in a house where you never saw your parents argue or fight, you know that then once you get into your own relationship and you get into your first argument, because that's normal in relationships, you're going to be devastated. Like, my parents never fought. They probably did. You probably just didn't see it. And so what research has really shown us is that it's important not for kids just to see conflict, but to see conflict resolution. It is important to sit down with a partner and say, especially with raising kids, okay, this is how I was raised. These are the things I want to bring into raising my own kids. And these are the things I kind of want to leave behind. And then just having insight. This helps me too if I'm ever just frustrated, like, oh, why did that happen when I was growing up? Or why did that not happen? That your parents do the best that they can. And that we really do hope, I hope that my kids are better parents than I am, right? Like, I hope every generation learns and gets better and better. So you want to start there. Like, okay, here's kind of, the communication breakdown of what's going on. And if you were raised in a house where you never saw your parents argue or fight, you know that then once you get into your own relationship and you get into your first argument, because that's normal in relationships, you're going to be devastated. Like, my parents never fought. They probably did. You probably just didn't see it. And so what research has really shown us is that it's important not for kids just to see conflict, but to see conflict resolution. So that piece is so important. And that piece is the message of, even when you love somebody and you respect them, it's okay sometimes to get frustrated and mad. It's better to get frustrated and mad in a respectful way. You don't do that all the time. And when you hurt someone's feelings, you come back and apologize, and then you move on. I mean, how many life lessons are you teaching right there without sitting down and lecturing them, right? Of like, you need to be nice, you need to say sorry, but you're really showing them, hey, you know what? Mom was not nice in the kitchen right there. And I'm sorry, to my husband, I'm sorry that I was just rude right there. And he say, it's okay. And we kiss and make up in front of them. They see that that's normal. That's what happens in relationships. Now, I don't obviously want to be screaming all the time at my husband in front of my kids. No, of course not. But is that going to happen every once in a while? Of course. Is it going to happen every once in a while that I'm screaming at my kids? Of course. But the communication is also important for me to then go back to my kids and say, hey, Harper, you know what? Mom, I did not take a deep breath. I went from 0 to 100. And what do I tell you when you get mad? And she's going to tell me, walk away, take a deep breath. I'm going to say, and I didn't do any of those things. And I'm sorry for that. And that doesn't make me a bad parent. That just makes me a real parent. And that shift is so different generationally for me and how our generation was raised. It just, there wasn't as much apologizing, I guess, or the understanding of, yeah, I wasn't perfect in that situation, and here's what I would do differently. Does that make sense?
It does.
So,
yes. And I agree. Every generation just seems to be improving, because I know, like, my parents' generation, it was kids are to be seen,
not heard,
and not heard.
Right.
And then my generation, it was, you can express yourself,
right,
but to
a point. Yeah.
Right.
To a point.
Yeah. And then now it's even more like, be expressive, be who you are, embrace who you are.
Right.
And so we have seen these growths, but I do feel a large part of it is because there are individuals like you and others who are joining together to say, look, we can be better.
Sure.
We can show better.
Yeah.
And we can grow in these ways.
Yeah. You did just touch on something too. I always talk about with clients and with my own husband too, of just sometimes the dial goes too far in one direction. So like, we're trying sometimes to get away from like some of the old school ways. So we're like all the way over, and we really need to go in the middle, meet in the middle more, because I would argue probably our kids think that they can say whatever they want all the time. Right. And like, I'm so glad that they had this very open relationship with us. But I also, my husband and I are like, I would have never talked to my mom that way. Now, maybe if my mom was sitting here, she'd be like, oh no, you did. However, I don't think I did as much as my kids. I'm like, you were not scared of me at all, and I think that's okay. But I do think sometimes when we're looking at it, pulling some good from old school stuff and pulling some good from new school stuff and having that be the parenting solution is the perspective that I come from. I do think that there should be rules and consequences and consistency and all that good stuff, but I do want to focus on communication and emotions too. And it's hard to find that balance. It truly is.
And I feel like that's the line most parents are walking. It's like,
Right.
I don't want to squash you,
Right.
your creativity, your uniqueness.
Right.
But at the same point, we're living in a society where we have to all balance and be together.
Right.
And that is one of the questions I desire to explore with you too, is how do you do that? Because I agree. I think it's not just in parenting, but in our society as a whole.
Sure.
We've the pendulum went from here and whoa,
exactly.
we're way over here
Yeah.
now, which is fairly normal if we're going to find the median
balance.
point, right? We have to explore to understand where is the midpoint. But how do you, with children and with families, kind of explain that? Because we can get it on an independent,
right?
But when you're growing up in that world,
right,
how do you explain that? We lived through the other side and now we're living through this side. They're only living through this.
Right.
How do you help them understand that?
I think it's challenging, and I think that sometimes it's trial and error, right? So there are things that we know that we want to do differently. I'm just speaking from my own experience that I want to do differently than maybe how I was raised. But there's things that I still want to do that my parents did too, that I'm like, no, that was amazing. That's the person that I am. That's why I'm watching my husband's parents too. I'm like, no, that's why you're such a hard worker. That's why, I want to emulate a lot of those things now, but sometimes I fall back into what I just saw, okay. And then I'm like, oh, no, that's not how I want to parent this. I want to parent this a little bit differently. Again, I think half the battle into change is having insight into that change. And so even after the fact, knowing, you know what, I didn't handle that the way that I want to, and then making it right, I do think is half the balance of balancing that out. And then going back to those family meetings, even if it's like, hey, every anniversary, we sit down and we talk about what's going really well in our relationship and what could be worked on, and what's going really well in our family life and what can be worked on. And then those conversations just become really organic and second nature. And that communication piece doesn't feel so like foreign or like someone's in trouble, right? Like, my wife's mad at me, so now we have to talk about our relationship. No, it doesn't have to be like that. It's just more like, hey, this is the strength of our marriage right now, and then these are the areas that we can work on. And that ebbs and flows with your season of life.